Hello YouTube! In this video we're going to be taking a look at Stella, Princess of Solaria. Just like for Bloom, I'll be giving her 2 civilian outfits and a fairy form. If you missed that video, I'm Teddy and welcome to my take on a Winx Club Rewrite. I wanted this video to start before I even began sketching anything, but somehow over an hour and a half of my screen recording is just gone. It's not in any of my files or any of my folders. I don't know what happened to it, so unfortunately we have to skip right to the finished base. So I don't know, I'm so sorry. Anyways, this is the video for Stella, Princess of Solaria, one of the most powerful kingdoms in the world of magics, which is what I'm calling this planet. It is magics instead of a dimension, it's a planet. Um, Stella is glamorous and has the budget to indulge in her fashion. However, I think most of her more expensive pieces are going to tend to be like luxurious formal wear and jewelry and stuff. Um, Also, I'm making these redesigns for a hypothetical animated rewrite slash reboot, so I want the designs to be animation friendly, which means I'm not going too crazy with like little details and stuff like that. In the original show, the girls get lots of opportunities to get dressed up, and it rocks. The fashion in Winx is so fun. They cancel class on the second day of school just to invite like the guys from Red Fountain over for a ball. And I wish the witches from Cloud Tower were invited to that, if only for the chance to see what they would wear. And for special occasions and stuff, like all of the girls obviously will have more detailed and fancy like dresses and outfits and stuff like that. But for her day-to-day outfit, Stella isn't gonna be full glam all the time. But in each of these outfits, I did give her heels. I gave her platforms. She's pretty tall in my mind. She's the tallest out of all of my redesigned Winx Club members. This absolutely would not stop her from rocking massive platforms, okay? Stella has the confidence and the balance to wear these, and she probably trained for it growing up as a princess. Okay, let's talk about Solaria as a kingdom. It's big. It's a big kingdom. It's hot, it's dry, and it lays along a coastline. Solaria is known far and wide for its beautiful beaches, exciting cities, and for its love of music and theater. There's a major Hollywood thing going on with hints of Las Vegas and San Francisco, and Solaria has a booming tourist industry. It's a very popular place for vacationing, especially if you have money. The royal family of Solaria are very public figures. They make frequent appearances, as well as holding frequent galas and events, to which the royals of allied kingdoms, like their neighbors and stuff, are often invited. However, there are also many in attendance who are wealthy upper class people, other high ranking to mid ranking members of government, or like celebrities. Because of this, Stella didn't really get a chance to get to know her guests very well at these events. Even as she had met the king and queen of Heraklion, a powerful kingdom to the northeast, and many of their court, she had never actually met the crown prince. That's why she doesn't call out Brandon and Sky for switching places. She didn't actually know they did. I think that her finding out Brandon did something risky like that for his friend would remind her of when she lied about Bloom in order to have her be able to attend Alfea, and she probably finds it really endearing. And rarely, the royal family of their neighboring kingdom across the sea would visit for very special occasions, as the king and queen of Andros have always been super busy people. As leaders of a half underwater kingdom of amphibians and humans, they didn't really have time for social events. However, one of these events that they did attend was a ball thrown for Stella when she found out she was a fairy, and I'll talk more about that later because she found out much earlier than a fairy normally would. But even as a beloved celebrity among her people, all her life, Stella has not truly been seen. She found many of her friendships growing up in the castle to be shallow and fleeting, and she did have a loving relationship with her parents, but their divorce has ruined any chance of her feeling comfortable with them right now. King Radius, her father, he throws himself into his work until he meets Countess Cassandra, or starts a relationship with her, and Stella almost gets an evil stepsister. And her mom, Queen Luna, Fairy of the Moon, has moved away from the castle and focuses on her magic most of the time. Bloom coming into Stella's life would have changed everything for her. It probably would have been the first time in her whole life that she had an actual real friend that saw her as a person and not a princess. And of course the other Winx loved Stella, but before they became friends, they all already knew about her as Princess of Solaria. That has to make it a little weird sometimes because, like, in this rewrite, some of them are from her kingdom, so she's literally going to be their queen one day. That's something different that she has from the other princesses in her group because there's there's two other princesses, but none of the Winx are from Andros, and Bloom's kingdom doesn't exist. Plus, when they all met her, they didn't even know that she was a princess. And I'm going to move on because I have said princess too many times at this point. Just my main point is that with Bloom, Stella is able to be comfortable and secure in their friendship. Okay. And Stella loves being at Alfea, okay? Despite not actually doing very well in her classes, like she loves being away from the castle. She really likes going to the dining hall with the other students and taking trips to the nearby city of Zenith. Yes. Um, it's also just nice getting to live with her friends. And Stella loves being a fairy, despite magic being like homework her entire life. She does love being a fairy, especially specifically the one that she is, Fairy of the Shining Sun. She does love her kingdom, and what could possibly represent Solaria better than its queen being the Fairy of the Shining Sun? Not just the sun, but the sunlight, and the fact that the sunlight reaches the people of Magix. It's perfect. It's beautiful. So when it comes to her schoolwork, she's not doing poorly because she just doesn't care. And it's not even because she's a rebellious princess slacking off and going out to parties, which are true. But she does care. Due to her status, she actually began her studies much earlier than others usually would, as I've mentioned. So instead of finding out about her fairiness naturally around age 16, when a fairy's wings naturally emerge, she was given tests and her wings were drawn out as a child. But unfortunately, because she began learning magic prematurely and her wings were brought out artificially, she had to be given a magical enhancer in the form of a staff, which she keeps on her as a ring when it's not in use. We'll just say it's on the hand where you can't see her ring finger because I forgot to draw it. Now, even though she is past the age where she should need it, she still uses it as a crutch. I like to think of Stella as having ADHD, which I have, and so she finds it hard to engage in things that don't give her that sweet, sweet dopamine. A really big part of Winx Club is Alfea, School for Fairies, but they touch on it a little bit in the show, but most of what happens is about the Winx going into their backstories or fighting the tricks or discovering some weird new evil guy. And they don't actually discuss Alfea very much. I don't know, maybe it's just not as much as I want them to, as a really big fan of lore, but it almost seems like Alfea is just the place that they needed to bring all of the Winx together. But it's not very fleshed out, in my opinion. There's so many other fairies there. This is kind of a tangent, I'm sorry, but there's so many other fairies there, and we hardly even get recurring background characters. The only one that I actually remember is, I think her name is Frances. She's the one that dresses up like Harley Quinn, and I think she's like the fairy of laughter. I mean that makes sense, right? But yeah, she's that fairy with the short brown hair with the blonde spots in it. That in one scene they accidentally put her in Bloom's bed. And there's also what the heck is her name? Amaryl? And I don't really know anything about her. I just know her and Stella had beef. But yeah, there's not a lot of other students that we get to know. Okay, so I looked it up out of curiosity, and there is a list of names of minor background fairies on the Winx Club Wikipedia, specifically the 4Kids version of Winx Club. But like I said, we don't get to know anything about any of these fairies. Next to all of their names is just a description of what they look like. Besides a few, obviously. Like, we know who Murda is, you know? We know Murda, we know Galatea, Nova, I guess, you know? Anyway, back to Stella. Back to Stella. In my rewrite, I would want to spend more time on what it's actually like learning how to be a fairy at Alfea. And part of Stella's character arc would be overcoming her aversion to learning magic. She wants to be a good fairy. She likes being a fairy, but she can't get herself to put in the work. She's actually a year older than the rest of the Winx. She's repeating her freshman year at Alfea because she failed her classes, and she destroyed a lab trying to make a new shade of pink. And the only way that she'll be able to get her grades to go up is through support from her friends, through her fellow Winx Club members. And I think something really major that will help her out is reconnecting with her mom as a fellow fairy. Stella is the only member of the Winx Club that is not a guardian fairy. She and her mother are both the kind of fairy that represent something. They draw their power from what they embody, and their magic is based around it. Usually, this thing aligns with their personality as well. That's why Stella is the way that she is. I'm still having trouble picking a name for this kind of fairy. Some of the descriptor words I guess I have for it are aspect fairy, entity fairy, essence fairy, spirit fairy, idol fairy, or embodiment fairy. I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. I think I'm leaning towards aspect fairy. But I am not sure. Okay, and finally, I want to talk a little bit more about the outfits that I designed for Stella in this video. Her outfits are bright, saturated blocks of color. Stella is a fashion designer, and one of her hobbies is sewing. I think a lot of what she wears day to day are things that she made, even hand dyeing fabric to get that bright color she wants. And as Fairy of the Shining Sun, she is a light fairy. Much of her magic is centered around light. And maybe because of this, Stella has excellent color vision. So she can tell if there's like even a slight difference between hues, and she just adores high saturation. I think that this would also be like a cultural part of Solarian fashion, but you know, she's made it trendy again. She's really brought it back. Stella has really good color palettes. Her original color palette is tertiary colors, green, orange, and purple, and her alternate color palette is cyan, magenta, and yellow, which I especially love because it's the primary colors of light, and she's a light fairy. And her fairy form is The color palette is the inverse ratio of Bloom's teal and orange. Bloom uses more teal, Stella obviously uses more orange, and they both have some yellow thrown in. Bloom has her tiara and her gem, and Stella has her hair. And just like with Bloom, I kept her fairy outfit pretty faithful to the original design. It's just so iconic. All of the fairy outfits are so iconic, especially Bloom and Stella, in my opinion. The main change is the length of her boots. I just felt like over the knee was a little more modern and a little more chic. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say for Stella's video. I'm not entirely sure who I'm gonna do next, so let me know if you have anyone in particular that you want. It'll probably be another member of the Winx, the originals. Um, yeah. Thank you so much for watching and sitting through me rambling about this. I hope you enjoyed. Bye!